Teen Titans Go, an extremely popular animated series that first aired on Cartoon Network in 2013. And of course, because of its popularity, it brought about many video games based on the show. And today, I'll be 100%ing the most popular of the bunch, named Teeny Titans, in which you play as Robin, the leader of the Teen Titans, who sort of develops an addiction to these mini collectible figures named Teeny Titans, which you can of course collect, but also battle other people with, climbing the Teeny Titan ranks. So today, our goal is to collect all 77 figures, complete every mission and side quest, and lastly, defeat the mysterious reigning champion, Hooded Hood, in order to become the Mega Teeny Champion ourselves. Oh, and quickly, about 88% of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up enjoying the video, consider subscribing. It's free, you can always change your mind later. Okay, that's enough introductions. Let's begin. The game starts off just how the show would, panning into the Teen Titans tower where the group is sitting in front of the TV, and Robin smoke bombs in, calling for an emergency meeting, but is quickly distracted by the advertisement on the TV for the Teeny Titans. And after watching through the entire thing, says this,
"Please, Teeny Titans. Sounds like a baby's toy."
But then quickly retracts his statement when this happens.
Oh my, such fun.
That figure, it's me? It's so beautiful! I must have it! I must collect all the Teeny Titans!
So this is where the journey/addiction starts to collect all the figures and become the Mega Teeny Champion of Jump City. And the first step to make this possible was going to the store. So jumping into the streets, that's exactly where we headed. And I know the game resolution is a little odd, but that's kind of just how the game was made to be played on a vertical phone. But I promise you do get used to it pretty quickly. But for now, we'd made it to the store, where the game shows us that if we swipe around, we can look at all the different collectibles in the store, and you can even see that the figures are layered and there's more in the back, and to get to those guys you have to swipe the ones in the front off the shelf, which I think is a pretty cool little feature. But if you look at the top, our goal here was to find a Robin figure, which I finally found behind the Starfire in the front. And collecting the box, we opened it up, unlocking Robin, which was the first of 77 figures that we needed to collect in the game. And looking at the teeny version of himself, Robin starts crying, saying it's beautiful and that it's the greatest one of all time, which when I first read this, I kind of didn't really believe him since it was the first one we unlocked, so I assumed that it'd be pretty bad, but it actually does end up being pretty good. And as I left the shop, we actually ran into Raven, who tells Robin that he's taking the toys too seriously, but she couldn't blame him because she bought a Raven figure of her own. And being the rage baiter he is, Robin tells Raven that her figure is a lot worse than his, and Raven falls for this rage bait and says that we now need to battle, initiating our very first battle of the entire game against Raven. And every battle in the game starts right here where we're shown this gamepad looking thing, and you can see at the bottom we usually have 6 characters in our team, and from those 6 characters we place 3 onto the board. But since we only had 1 so far, we could only place that one Robin. And placing the figurines onto that gamepad, they come to life in a battleground where we're matched up against our opponent, and this is how every battle happens. And looking at this chart that the game gives us, you can tell that it's kind of like Pokemon but with a lot less typings. But I'm not gonna lie, I kind of just ignored the typings the entire game, so you won't be seeing me really mention those. But instead, what's more important for the battles is the move that your characters have. And so far, my Robin has 2 moves. One is called the Heroic Pose, which gives him extra power when he uses it, and his second move is the Birdarang, which deals damage with no additional effects. And normally, if you look down, you'll see that the Birdarang only deals 4 damage, but if you use the Heroic Pose move, it ends up dealing 6 damage. But right after using the attack once, the damage goes back to normal again. And that's kind of the basics that you need to know about Robin's attacks. There of course is a lot more going on within the battle, but I'll slowly start to explain everything as we progress through the game, as I don't want to just throw everything out at once. But one important thing from the battle was that Robin had gained experience and leveled up to level 2. And usually when you level up, you get a choice between 3 stats that you could upgrade. And here I was given the options between dodge, health, and power, but there's also a 4th stat named luck. And for now, I didn't really know what dodge did, so it's going to be a choice between health and power, and I ended up going with power, which after choosing, we left the battle and Robin boasted his victory, but Raven also kind of started liking the Teeny Titans. But Robin had completely ignored her as he was more focused on the coins that we'd obtained from the battle, because more coins of course meant more figures. And after conversing with Raven a little more, we were assigned our first mission of finding another toy store. And how I was going to find it, I kind of had no idea, but the game was quick to guide me with this magnifying glass in the top right, which after pressing it zooms out onto the map and it showed us where the next toy store was. And if you tap on a certain place on the map, it actually places a waypoint there. So wasting no time, I started heading over. On the way, passing a Superman statue, and eventually making it to Toyman's store, where as soon as we entered, we were met by Mr. Chibi, who is basically the figurehead of the entire Teeny Titan craze. But Robin wanted nothing to do with him and tells him to get out of his way and calls him a tiny toy man. Though Mr. Chibi didn't really care and kept on talking, telling us that this location didn't have many figures left, but all the stores get replacements very often. And Mr. Chibi uses the word teeny a lot, so Robin tells him to stop using that word. But in the process, Mr. Chibi almost slips up calling the Teeny Titans an addiction, but stops himself last second, which leads us onto this scene where we now have to pick between the other 4 Titans. And at this point, I genuinely had no idea which Titan to pick because I didn't know what their attacks or stats were. So I was about to just randomly choose Beast Boy, but as soon as I picked him, the game told me that I could flip the box to its back and actually see the stats and moves of the characters. And this was pretty cool because it showed me that Beast Boy had this tofu attack and this whale attack that dealt damage to the entire enemy team. Cyborg had this attack which filled up our battle bar quicker, and I'll explain what the battle bar is soon as well, as that's pretty important. But Cyborg's second attack was a plasma shot that dealt 7 damage. Starfire had a laser eyes attack that dealt 4 damage, and it also was a charge up, and she had a healing ability. And lastly, Raven, who we'd already fought, had an attack that slowed down the opponent's battle bar, and she had an attack that dealt 6 damage. And at the time, from these characters, Beast Boy seemed the best to me because he had that whale attack that dealt damage to all the other team, meaning after opening this box, Beast Boy was the second figurine that we'd collected out of the 77. And if you're curious, knowing what I know now, the actual best choice there was probably Cyborg, with Raven in second place. Because I'm not gonna lie, Beast Boy and Starfire kinda suck. And ironically, Beast Boy is actually probably the worst choice I could have picked here, but it doesn't matter too much. Though leaving Toyman's store, we did run into another problem, which was this kid wearing these 3D glasses who called Robin old man and then immediately challenged him to a battle afterwards, which Robin of course accepted. So we were assigned to beat this kid who in the game is actually named Annoying Kid, a pretty fitting name. And this time, since I had 2 figurines, I could place my Robin and then also my Beast Boy onto the gamepad, bringing them both into the battle. And now let me take the chance to explain a couple more important things that happen within the battles, one of which, if you look at the bottom and the top, you'll notice a green and a red bar, which like I hinted at earlier is named the battle bar. And the battle bar you can think of as the energy / mana you need to perform your attacks. And there are some specifics that should be mentioned about it, one of which, if you switch characters, the battle bar doesn't deplete and it actually stays at the same exact amount, giving you a ton of freedom of which moves and characters to use at what time. And even better, there isn't a limit to how fast or how many times you can switch between your figs, and you can just do it constantly if you really want to. And these are both important things because later on they allow for some pretty cool combos with the characters I unlock. And you might have noticed it there, using the heroic pose from Robin also affected the damage of Beast Boy's attack, because normally the whale attack does 9 damage, but after using the heroic pose, which gave it +3, it dealt 12 damage. And the heroic pose move from Robin, if you remember in the first battle, only gave +2 attack, but this time it's giving +3 attack since Robin leveled up. And you might have missed it there, but the battering also now deals 5 base damage instead of 4, basically showing the direct effects of us leveling up that power stat on Robin. And there aren't any combos or strategies I can make use of this early on, and it's basically just me spamming the attacks as soon as I get them. But I will start mentioning the semi-in-depth things when it's important. And for now, after beating the Annoying Kid, he told us that we were extremely skilled and our pro skills might even be enough to defeat the Hooded Hood, which is actually the first we technically hear of the Hooded Hood within the game. And this Annoying Kid tells us that to get to Hooded Hood, we have to compete in all these different tournaments throughout Jump City to finally reach him in the end. And our first tournament would be inside a pet store, with the tournament being named the Pet Store Tournament. And I would call this our first actual story mission. The previous missions have kind of just been the tutorial, but now we'd start getting to the actual battling and progressing through the story. So after Robin monologued about him completing all the missions and collecting all the figs, I noticed this button that appeared in the top left, so I clicked on it. And this button technically leads you to the Titan's Tower, which in this game allows you to look at your awards, your wiki, and your collection of figs. And the first thing I looked at was the awards, and I saw 6 different awards, which basically means there's 6 different tournaments that we have to win in this game. The second thing I looked at was the figure wiki, which keeps track of all the figures you've collected, even if you sell them or feed them to Silky. And I'll explain what that means as well. But for now, I went to my collection, which basically was just Beast Boy and Robin, and then headed right back out. Afterwards, pinging the pet store that was holding the tournament and starting my run to make it over there. And if you're curious with the movement of the game, there isn't really like a joystick stick or anything, you can either choose to tap or swipe to move your character. The tap is more precise, but kind of annoying to use, so I end up just using the swipe, which makes Robin run infinitely in one direction. And eventually I made it to the pet store named Poochie Pets, but there was a problem because this tournament was apparently for dogs only. And Robin decided to enter this tournament, he'd need to become a dog, and started thinking if only he knew someone that could turn into a dog. And coincidentally, Beast Boy was standing right around the corner, so we instantly went to talk to him. So Robin explained the situation to him, which Beast Boy said was ridiculous, and Robin also mentioned that he needed his help since he could turn into a dog. But Beast Boy said he's not going in there since that place is for puppies and he's a grown man boy baby. But instead, he did know someone else that could help us, and we'd find him in a park south from here where he's always drinking from its fountain. So taking his advice, we headed south, but while on my way there, the sun had gone down and it turned nighttime. And I will explain this nighttime slash daytime thing a little later on, but it was important for me to mention it right now for this specific mission because we were tasked here to investigate the fountain for some secrets, and we found something shiny in the water, which was a dog collar, and it belonged to someone named Dog Guy, which of course belonged to Beast Boy's friend. And Robin mentioned that maybe he'd be here later tonight, and this is why it's important to mention that it was nighttime because Dog Guy spawned instantly. And having a small dialogue with Dog Guy, we find out that in order to get our own dog costume, we need to win against him in a battle. On our team, of course, we still had Robin and normal Beast Boy, but on his team he had 80s Beast Boy and Mammoth. And like I mentioned, the strategy for us is pretty straightforward, just using the heroic pose ability until eventually we can deal a decent amount of damage and then use the actual physical attack to get down the enemy's health. Now right here was where I kind of learned that the whale actually isn't as good as I originally thought, because when it says that it does 9 damage, it actually splits that 9 damage between all the enemies, and it doesn't actually do 9 damage to each enemy. But I did continue using it with the help of some heroic poses because it was still decent, and I still wasn't familiar with the combat and what abilities were actually good to use. And either way, we took down Mammoth, which leveled up Robin to level 3, unlocking a new attack named Staff Slam, which deals 10 damage and stuns the opponent for a little bit. Beast Boy also leveled up to level 2, and from the 3 choices, I chose health. And as promised by Dog Guy, after beating him, he gave us our own costume, which Robin instantly made sure to put on, exclaiming that it was now time to win the tournament. But before we continue on with the main story mission, I should explain that this game is sort of all over the place since we are going for that 100%. Because one, there's the main storyline missions in which you compete in all the different tournaments to defeat the end boss, but then there's also a ton of side missions which you don't need to complete to beat the game. But since we are going for that 100%, there are a bunch of characters that are only achievable through the side missions, so we are in a way forced to do them. And my main reason for mentioning this is that you might get a little confused at parts because I do bounce back and forth between the storyline missions and the side missions. But to simplify things, the main missions are just the tournaments, and you can just consider everything else that we do in the game a side mission. I hope that clears up any confusion that might be caused in the future, but even if it doesn't, it's not too big of a deal. And also, exploring the map, I had now made it to this one place that was named Bizarro's Comics, which contains some pretty cool characters like Red X and even this golden 5-star Batgirl. But you can see that the price of it was a little too high at 2,040 coins, and I only had 475, so I'd have to come back for this one later on. I also saw a glimpse of a golden fig in the back, so I looked to see what it was, and it was a Wonder Raven. And I mentioned this because there's a bunch of figs that are basically just a teeny titans in the form of other Justice League characters, and they do count as their own figurine to add to the collection. And looking through the shop a little more, I saw the Starfire figurine, which was only 150 coins, and then I also ran into these boxes, which were a mystery fig, and the cost of the box was 175 coins, and I felt like I just had to grab one because the randomness enticed me. But just in case, I also grabbed a Starfire as well. And checking out, we had now gotten Starfire as the 3rd figurine in our collection, and the mystery box, I'm not gonna lie, was a little anticlimactic because it also ended up being a Starfire. That, I'm not gonna lie, was kind of just unlucky, and I instantly went into my collection and just sold that Starfire as I didn't need it. And if you're curious how the selling works, basically you can pawn off your figs and get back 50% of the coins that you spent on them. Or if you got them from a random mystery box, it's really just dependent on the figurine's actual price. So sometimes you can get an expensive one from the mystery boxes and profit off of what you get, but that's extremely rare. And having enough coins, I actually went back into the shop and bought another mystery box, which this time I unlocked Red X, adding it to the collection as our 4th figurine. And as I was making it back to the pet store for the tournament, I saw that it actually closed poses until daytime. So I realized that I had more time to explore Jump City and made my way southward, where I ran into this random dog just standing on a dock. And if you notice that purplish star above his head, this basically indicates that this is a side quest. And somehow Robin was able to communicate with him and learn that the side quest that we got from the dog was buying 4 different Robin figurines, 3 of them just being the normal Robin and 1 of them being the 80s Robin, which our reward for that would be 1,500 coins and a mystery figurine. So a pretty decent reward. But I knew that this wasn't really possible yet, as I hadn't seen the 80s figure anywhere in the shops. And just as I was about to run away, I actually went back to the dog because I realized that there's 2 different options when I talked to him, and one of them was battle. And this was a pretty cool feature in the game, that even the characters that give you side quests, you can battle them as well. And I don't really know how this makes sense, but the dog somehow had the knowledge to battle figs, which he had a new character that I hadn't seen yet, being Dr. Light. And I of course just spammed the heroic pose on Robin, but this time is a little different because now we had the staff smash attack and I didn't have to rely on the batarang. And using the attack, we took out Dr. Light in one shot. And if you notice right there's that random white mystery box that appeared, and those in this game are called tofu. And basically you can think of them like a Mario Kart power-up, where it spins for a little bit and then it gives your figs a random buff. And if you look at Beast Boy's attack there in the middle, you can see that he actually has a tofu attack, which gives me a random tofu every time I use it. But that is one of the worser attacks in the entire game, so I basically never end up using it, and instead just mainly rely on him for his whale attack. And if you look at my bar at the bottom, you can see that it had been slowed down by Raven, and that's probably one of the more annoying things to go up against, because you just feel heavily nerfed. And I do later realize that taking out characters like Raven earlier on in the battle is better overall, because it gives them less time overall that they're nerfing our battle bar. And even though I'm going sorta in depth explaining things within the battles, these earlier ones are pretty easy, especially the side quest ones, because they aren't meant to be a challenge. They're mainly just a way for you to level up your figs and earn extra coins to buy more figs. And speaking of leveling up, Beast Boy had leveled up to level 3, unlocking his power of gorilla form. And this power, I'm gonna be honest, it seems cool at first, but it's kind of one of the worst powers in the game. And I'll better explain why when it's relevant. As for now, if you look in the bottom right, after beating the dog, I actually got a message, and it seemed to be from someone named Mr. Meow, complaining that Jump City had a dog problem and he needed our help defeating 3 dogs, which he'd award us with 500 coins and a mystery fig. So that was another side quest added to the list. But I had more important things, as now it had turned daytime, meaning it was time for me to finally make it back to the pet store, where we instantly ran into Mr. Chibi, bringing us more bad news, saying that we needed 6 figures in total to enter the tournament. And since we only had 4, I had to make my way back to Toyman store, and looking through some options like Lady Legacy and even these new things that I was seeing for the first time named chips, I couldn't really decide, so I ended up going with the random Riddler box again. And opening it up, I unlocked Mammoth, making it the 5th figure in our collection. And at the time of unlocking it, I thought it was pretty good because it seemed like a direct upgrade to Beast Boy, so he ends up staying on my team for a while, up until I realized that his attacks were actually pretty bad as well. But we still had other things to worry about, as that was only the 5th figurine that we had in our collection, and we still needed 1 more. And we only had 65 coins to our name. But while I was brainstorming of what I could do, I got this random message from Batman saying that he left his door unlocked at his office and he needed us to go check on it since we don't have anything else better to do. And just as I was looking around the map to find this office, this weird thing happened at the very bottom of the screen where it said there was a free figure giveaway at Bizarro's Comics and that it was only for a limited time, which I found out that the limited time was only 30 seconds, so I instantly made a rush towards the Bizarro's Comic store. And getting there with 9 seconds to spare, I clicked on the shop and got a random figurine that was promised, which the random figurine in question ended up being Seymour, another member of the Hive like Mammoth and the 6th figure in our collection. But I do want to mention that the random free figure thing that happened is the type of thing about this game that made it really fun to play, because there's a bunch of just tiny but very creative things along this game that made it feel very refreshing to play. But enough glazing the game, as it is now time to enter our first tournament, which right after entering we're confronted by Mr. Chibi, who tells us the rules of the tournament, which are basically we progress through the tournament beating all the opponents, but we're only able to bring in 6 figurines in total, and the damage dealt to my figures carries over from battle to battle. So we definitely had to be strategic with our choices. And our first battle again was against just a normal dog. And looking up top, you can see that this battle was going to be pretty easy, as the dog only had 1 figure. So what I basically did was spam the heroic pose until I had enough power on my staff smash, and then I flipped over to Mammoth to tank any attacks from the opponent, and eventually when I had enough bar power, I switched back to Robin, taking an attack from the the opponent again, but now I could deal a heavy damage dealing attack of my own and one-shot him. Our next opponent in the tournament was a dog named Poops, who this time had 2 characters instead of 1, and of course our strategy stayed the same of spamming the heroic pose, and then this time I actually decided to use Beast Boy's new ability, which was the transform one, and using it basically gives me 2 different attacks, one of which in the middle, if you look, is a mega attack that deals 31 damage, but you have to use it 3 times in order for it to actually attack. And then there's also a barrel toss, which is the same thing as the whale, but its base damage is just 2 points higher. This was also one of the first times I tried to use Starfire and her healing abilities, as I thought that they might come in handy in the tournament, mainly because the damage dealt to our characters carries over from battle to battle, but I quickly realized that our healing abilities were kinda useless, because by the time that I healed the health with Starfire, the opponent would just do an attack and deal the damage again. So I again just shifted my focus towards attacks and eventually was able to win using the Robin's attacks, which leveled up Robin to 4 and I upgraded his health, and then Starfire also leveled up to level 3, unlocking the battle bar speed boost, which you won't be seeing me use too much with Starfire, but it is important that I mention it here because this is one of the best attacks in the game and I do use it later on with a better character, and I'll explain why I don't use it with Starfire and why it's better with different characters. But moving up the ladder, we had now unlocked a Tofu, and these Tofus basically give your teams a boost before you go into battle, and this time I got a 6 health Tofu, which basically means that I'm able to heal one of my characters 6 health before going in. And as Robin at this point was my best character, he was the obvious choice. And our third opponent in the tournament was Lord Barkington, who had now ramped up the difficulty with 3 characters in his arsenal. It was actually a little tough for me here because I couldn't really decide which characters to bring into battle, because of course I wanted to bring in Robin, but I knew that if he took too much damage I wouldn't be able to use him in the last battle of the tournament. But there was actually another thing about this tournament, which if you lost a battle and even if you had your reserve 3 characters in the back, it didn't matter and it just completely made you lose the tournament. So you couldn't just bring in any figures as fodder and you actually had to try to win the battle that you went into, which is why I again brought in Robin and also Mammoth as my Beast Boy replacement, and then Seymour was my fodder character that I was willing to just throw away if needed. And the strategy still stayed the same of me just spamming the heroic pose and then just using my simple attacks to take out the enemies, which was working decently as we took out Starfire and Gizmo pretty quickly, leaving only the Robin on the other team. And for this guy I actually decided to use a different attack, which was Mammoth's 3 charge attack, which was the same as the Beast Boy's gorilla mode, and using this attack basically meant that I didn't have to bring in my Robin to sacrifice any more health on him, and this attack dealt more than enough damage to deal with the Robin without the need of any heroic poses. So getting the 3rd charge on the attack, Mammoth beats his chest and uses an ultimate punch on Robin to take him out, allowing me to win the battle without any casualties. And we'd also leveled up Mammoth to level 3, unlocking the boulder toss, which was a much better version of Beast Boy's whale and barrel toss, because compared to the whale it dealt 6 more damage and compared to the barrel toss it dealt 4 more damage. And this was when I realized that Mammoth was just a better variant of Beast Boy in this game. But moving on, Seymour also leveled up to level 3, unlocking his plasma shot attack, which deals 9 damage. And even though I just mentioned that we leveled up Seymour, we don't really use this guy ever again, so you don't have to worry about remembering his attack. And more importantly, we had one more Tofu that we could get before going into the final battle, and this one was a pretty powerful one because it healed every character on my team for 14 health, which was pretty insane. But even more insane was that I found out that the final boss of this tournament was a dog cyborg, and this was just Cyborg in a dog costume exactly like us, and it wasn't like a different variant of him or something. But either way, after a short dialogue, Robin challenges Cyborg to see who's top dog, beginning our ultimate battle of Dogbin against Dogborg. And looking up top, unsurprisingly, Cyborg's entire team was filled of his own characters, and the team I chose to bring in was Starfire, Robin, and Mammoth. Robin and Mammoth were kind of just the guaranteed picks here, and then I brought in Starfire to try and test out her battle bar boosting ability, which like I mentioned is pretty good because it heavily speeds up the battle bar speed, but on Starfire it sucks a little bit since it's the last power in her arsenal and it takes the battle bar a while to get there. But there is a character later on which has the battle bar power ability in its middle attack slot, so we get it much faster, and I'll go more in depth on that when we later unlock that character. But for now we had to focus on the battle as this was the last battle of the tournament, and the cyber characters had some pretty annoying attacks like the waffle attack, which basically made one of my attacks unusable. But thankfully here I was able to use my middle ability with the boosted battle bar pretty quickly, taking out one of the opponents. And then our next opponent was the 80 cyborg, who is sort of just a heavy support character because he can heal and he also has a battle bar boost, so he isn't much of a threat when it comes to destroying our stronger characters, but he can be very annoying to take out. And so after spamming a ton of heroic poses, I was finally able to get my staff smashed to deal enough damage, but then I actually had an even better idea, which was switching over to Mammoth and using his boulder attack instead. And this was because I knew that the 80s cyborg couldn't deal any significant damage to my characters, and if I kept him in onto the field, it meant that my characters would survive longer, and if I used Mammoth's attack here, I could take out the other cyborg before it was able to be sent in. And this, I'm not gonna lie, worked out perfectly because the other cyborg was taken out using the boulder attack, and then we just finished off this one with one final boulder. And I had pretty easily won this tournament, getting 500 coins and a pretty decent amount of XP for my characters. For Mammoth's level up, I chose health as he seemed like a tank type of character. For Robin's level up, since he got to level 5, he actually unlocked some figure customization, which I will explain soon. But for now, we'd unlocked our first trophy for winning the pet store tournament. And even better, Cyborg gave us a gift of an 80s cyborg, making it the 7th character added to our collection of 77. But another interesting thing happened where Hooded Hood appeared right in front of us just as soon as we left the tournament. And Robin called him out instantly, but he was also pretty quick on calling out Robin for wearing a dog outfit. And then Robin went on this big dialogue of how he's the new champ and then he's gonna take him down. But Hooded Hood kind of aura farmed, saying that Robin wasn't nearly ready to face him yet and that we should seek him out when we had another trophy under our belt, vanishing quickly after, leaving Robin rage baited and shouting that he'd made a grave enemy. But after Robin's tantrum, we unlocked another story mission, which was finding another new tournament to enter. And then our map suddenly zoomed out, uncovering this area which was originally blocked, and it showed us that our next tournament was in that area. But before we could explore that, if you remember, Robin leveled up to level 5 and unlocked some customization things, which there's 2 different figure customizations slash upgrades. One was this area where you could feed Silky your characters that you didn't need anymore, and in return he would power up your abilities, giving them an extra effect, which for now I didn't really have enough figs to upgrade my ability on the Robin, but whenever I do upgrade it, I will mention it again. And also the second customization thing I couldn't really make use of yet, but if you remember in that one shop, I saw those things named chips, and those were basically the whole customization. There were just different types of chips in the game which you could apply one of to every character, and they give you a different type of boost, ranging from normal stat boosts like a health or a damage buff to even some pretty crazy ones like starting off with the battle bar boost at the beginning of the battle. But again, I'll show those when we start using them. As for now, we added 80 Cyborg to our team and explored the city a little more, and as I was running around, I saw this shiny thing in this dumpster, and clicking on it, I got another mystery figurine box, which out of I got a normal Robin. And this was pretty cool because even though I didn't need the Robin, I could feed him to the Silky in the enhancer, and I had just gotten him for free. Or I also had the option of just selling him. But moving forward, I also noticed that there was this random dog just on this tree, and remembered that I had that side quest of defeating the different amount of dogs. So I quickly challenged him to a battle, and using some heroic poses comboed with the boulder attack of Mammoth, I was eventually able to defeat the opponents and win. And checking my side quest, this actually only left one more dog to defeat because apparently the dog from the tournament counted towards this. And so curious as to what the reward would be, I traveled around Jump City until I finally found the third dog, challenging him to a battle, which it only had one character, but this character had 36 health, so I was a little scared. But eventually I dwindled his health down and took it out completely, leveling up Robin to level 6 and putting the upgrade into the dodge ability. And there are 2 stats that I haven't really explained yet still, which are the dodge and the luck, and I promise I will explain those later on as well. It's just that it doesn't really make sense to explain them right now. But on the other hand, we had completed the side quest and unlocked the reward, giving us 500 coins and a Cat Beast Boy figurine, making this the 8th figure in our collection. And with all the coins I'd earned from the tournament and this mission that I just completed, I thought it was time to buy some new figures. And mainly I had my eyes on this guy, a 5-star golden Nightwing, which cost 1200 coins. But then looking at his stats, I kind of realized that even though it was 5-star and golden, it was basically the same thing as my normal Robin, and you could even argue it was worse than the Robin since it didn't have the heroic pose ability. So then I kind of just made the choice to save my coins until later on where I had another better figurine that I could buy, and started heading to the new area that I had unlocked, where I was first met by this cop who first said that this area was only allowed for the toughest of figure battlers, and since we had won the pet tournament, he allowed us right in. Exploring a little bit, I first ran into the shop, which had some new figs like Dr. Light and Billy Numerous that I could buy, but again, neither of them were good enough to justify spending coins on, so I chose to just save my money for now. There was also actually a third one named Brother Blood, and this guy in hindsight is actually pretty good, but at the time I didn't really know what he did, so I kind of ignored him. And it was mainly because I saw that he was a healer like Starfire, but I did later learn on that his first ability is actually pretty decent, but it doesn't really matter as I had completely ignored it. And another pretty cool thing that this game had was these sewer tunnel things. Every time you went past and clicked on them, they basically unlocked a different warp point on the map, which allowed you to fast travel to any other tunnels that you had unlocked. But since that was the first one I had unlocked, I couldn't really do anything with it. And instead, I just walked forward onto this green tile where the tournament is supposed to be, but it seemed like I couldn't do anything yet. And then I ran into a pretty iconic character from Teen Titans Go named Sticky Joe, who had seemed to lost his favorite cans of beans. So we're given a main storyline mission of finding his 5 cans of beans. And these cans of beans you can just find randomly lying across the map, and each one you collect adds it to the mission. And this is one of the many items that you have to collect to complete the achievements within the game. And while trying to find the cans of beans, I saw this trash can that was glowing, so I tapped on it and I got another random figurine, which out of the box I unlocked Dr. Light, making it the 9th fig in our collection. I also randomly ran into Gizmo, who Robin was quick to point blame on for absolutely nothing, and Gizmo even mentioned that he wasn't committing any crimes since he was now kinda sorta addicted to the figs, but Robin didn't believe him. So this started a side quest of trying to get Gizmo in trouble because Robin believed that he was doing something shady. I also ran into Cyborg, who said he was over the tournament junk and now he was into the new thing, which was teeny modding. Basically, he just wanted to create this perfect mod chip for your figurines. So our first side mission given to us by Cyborg was collecting junk from 8 different dumpsters. In this one, you kind of just get normally playing the game and exploring the map because there's a bunch of different dumpsters around, and if they're shiny and glowing, it means that you're in the right spot. Oh, and also looking at the shops in the newer district, I realized that there wasn't anything else spending my money on, so I kind of just caved in to buying the Nightwing, as even though it wasn't better than my Robin, it still was technically better than all of my other characters, and this made Nightwing the 10th fig in our collection. And also, it wasn't that big of a deal that I'd spent so much money on the Nightwing, since eventually I was gonna just have to buy it anyways to get the full 100%. And going into my collection, if you look at the bottom, you'll see that my team is full, so I was gonna have to replace someone for the Nightwing. And since Beast Boy and Mammoth were technically the same type of character and Mammoth was just a little bit better, I replaced Beast Boy with Nightwing. Oh, and I forgot to mention earlier, when I added the 80s Cyborg to my team, I took out Seymour, and our team was starting to look a little bit better than before, but there was still a long way to go. And exploring a little more, I ran into this random guy in a weird alleyway, and this guy is known as the tofu guy who really just loves tofu, and his side mission for us was just using 5 tofu within battle. Another one of the side missions that kind of just happens by itself, but I did also challenge him to a battle where I brought in Nightwing, and honestly he performed pretty well. And even better, my 80 Cyborg had leveled up and unlocked the battle bar speed attack. I also found this one place on the map where you can choose to take a nap and skip to daytime, and you can also do the opposite and go from daytime to nighttime if you want. And randomly I saw a shiny flashing bush, and out of it I got my first chip, which makes it to where healing abilities are 20% more effective. And I'm not gonna lie, this one's pretty useless, so I didn't really use it, but it was cool to get one. And more importantly, I keep saying things like shiny dumpster and shiny bush, and basically throughout the map randomly there'll just be a shiny object flashing, and if you click on it you can either get coins, a random booster box, or just like you saw, a chip. So you always want to be on the lookout for random things while you're exploring the map, because those things kind of just randomly spawn, and even if you've collected something from one dumpster, there's a chance that another thing can spawn in there at a later time, making your explorations a little bit more fun. But moving on, I was also now close to Batman's office, so I checked the front door for him and completed the mission. But right as I completed it, I got another message which wasn't from Batman, but it was actually just from a random person who seemed to be a Tamaranian prince, the same species as Starfire, but it was a little suspicious because their name was Scammiander, and what they wanted from us was coins, and said they'd make it worth our while to give them the coins because they'd return us with a bigger benefit in the future. So we had a side quest of sending them 200 coins via the mailbox in the Teen Titans Tower. And extremely curious as to what this would do, I went to the tower and sent them the 200 coins like they asked for, which for now only gave me 5 coins, and didn't really do anything immediately after. But that wasn't the last that we'd hear from the Tamaranian prince, and that story does escalate as we get farther and farther in the game. But for now, I'd also run into this little blonde girl who tasked us to buy a Raven fig for her. I then did also destroy her in battle as well, but I quickly felt pretty bad, so I went straight to the shop to get the Raven figurine, and instead of keeping it for myself, even though I needed a Raven fig, I gave it to the mission. In return, I got 300 coins and Cyborg's head, which is the 12th fig fig added to our collection. Also ran into this hot dog guy who was crying because he had a mishap with his cart and apparently all his weenies had disappeared. So we were tasked to find 5 hot dogs, and in return we'd get 600 coins. And as I made it back to the Shady District, I realized that the policeman also had a side quest on him. And if you remember, after talking to Gizmo, we were tasked to talk to the policeman, and this was the policeman in question. So we got 200 coins, also a task to prove Gizmo's villainous ways, which I didn't really know what that meant, but I kept on going. Oh, and I found another mystery box in this trash can, but it wasn't anyone new, and it was just Dr. Light again. The important thing though, that in my explorations, I had found all the cans of beans for Sticky Joe, and in return, he gave me this weird hot dog key, which we were immediately tasked to use. And I sort of just assumed that we'd have to use it here, but sadly, it was going to be closed until nighttime. So I realized that I actually hadn't battled Gizmo when I first talked to him, and made the effort to do so. The team I brought in was Robin, Nightwing, and my 80 Cyborg, and this actually ended up being the closest battle that I had had so far, because Billy Numerous and Gizmo's attacks completely took out my Nightwing and my 80 Cyborg, leaving just my Robin, and I hadn't defeated either of them yet. But eventually, I was able to use my Staff Smash on Billy Numerous, defeating him, which gave me this tofu that actually came in very clutch, as it was a sleep tofu, putting Gizmo to sleep for a little bit. And as you can see, there's like this bot thing going around my Robin, consistently damaging him, and that's one of Gizmo's abilities, which left me at 1 health. But since he'd fallen asleep from the tofu, I actually got my attack off before he could get another attack off, and somehow I won with 1 health left. Now this wasn't like an important fight or anything, and it didn't really matter if I'd lost, but it was pretty intense. And I leveled up a few characters, which for Cyborg I chose health, for Nightwing I also chose health, and then for Red X, who leveled up to level 3, he unlocked the Staff Slim power. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't really use Red X like ever, even though he has a pretty cool design. But more importantly, it was now nighttime, and I made my way over to the building, and this time it actually let me in. And this was the very next tournament that we were fighting in, with our first battle being against Tin Can Eddie. And as he was the first opponent in the tournament, he only had 1 character and pretty quickly got annihilated, but he did deal some damage to my mammoth. Our second opponent was Tofu Tony, and he quickly ramped things up with 3 characters, but again, my heroic poses and my consistent use of my battering was quickly taking down the opponents. And eventually, I was able to take down the last fig, winning the battle, leveling up Robin to level 7 and choosing the power-up option, as it seemed to be the best one for Robin, as it increased his heroic pose ability. And luckily, within our first tofu, I got a team heal, giving each of our characters 6 health. And then there's actually another tofu right after, before our next battle, and this time I got the spicy tofu, which basically gives you attack boost to start off the game, which our opponent this time was Gizmo. And I was trying to make use of this poison grenade ability that Nightwing had, and it was taking 1 damage at a time on the Gizmo, but since he had an 80 Cyborg on his team with those boombox characters, they kept constantly healing the opponents, and my poison grenade was basically doing nothing. And eventually I had to revert to my mammoth's attacks, and we were able to take down the opponent. The next person in line was Officer Doug, and he had some new opponents like Silky and Brother Blood, and this was when I realized that Brother Blood was actually pretty decent, because he kept sending out these bots to attack my characters, and since I'd underestimated them, I didn't bring in my Robin. And Starfire's healing abilities in no way were able to keep up. Even the Nightwing's poison grenade was once again basically useless, and Brother Blood kinda just completely destroyed my team, making for my very first loss in the entire game. And like I mentioned earlier, even if you have the reserve 3 characters in the back, even if you lose once in the tournament, you get kicked out. So I knew that I was gonna have to get some better characters for this one. And clicking on Sticky Joe, I actually found out that he had a shop of his own, with some pretty cool things like this multiverse Sticky Joe character, who kinda sucked, but then also this old school Silky, whose stats and attacks I really liked. There was this burp surprise attack, which dealt a random amount of damage. There was a burp shield, which put a shield around you for a temporary amount of time, and it blocked any attack that was thrown at you. And lastly, it had a battle bar speed up. And so I added the Silky to the cart alongside a mystery box, which I wish I could have added this golden mystery box, but I just didn't have enough coins as it cost 1,000. But then I actually also put away the mystery box because I had seen this mod chip that I really liked, and it only cost 250 coins, and basically it summoned a beatbox every time I defeated an enemy. And the beatbox, like you've seen with the 80 Cyborg, it can give you heals, which basically heal your figs, or there's a different version of the beatbox that can also give you more damage. Oh, and also unlocking the old school Silky, it was now the 13th fig in our collection, and it was very quickly added to my team. Oh, and I also took out the Starfire, as it kind of sold me in that last battle, and added in Dr. Light instead. Dr. Light I don't really use either, but I just didn't want the Starfire Starfire in my team. Oh, and as I was running around, I saw this one security camera that was on a building, which was apparently the one thing that we needed to get the Gizmo's villainous way thing. But apparently the one security camera didn't have enough evidence, so now we needed to find 3 more security cameras. And you're probably noticing I have a ton of side quests gathering up, but I'm not really completing any of them, and that's mostly on purpose. I'm definitely going around and making sure that I have all the side quests unlockable, but then I'm kind of just playing through the story normally and plan to do all the side quests at once towards the end. And any that kind of just got completed naturally while playing the game, I just let happen. You're gonna see at one point where I have like 18 side missions to complete. Oh, and talking about side missions, I saw this random dog, so I decided to battle him, and he only had 1 gizmo on his arsenal, so I beat him pretty easily, which defeating him actually had nothing to do with the side mission, but instead we had completed the tofu one, where we had to use 5 tofu within battle. And for completing it, we got 400 coins, and we unlocked another old school Silky. Also, I'd collected all the junk from the dumpsters for Cyborg, but didn't really bother reporting back to him yet. As for now, I'd ran into Jane, who's one of the 2 Wonder Twins, and she seemed to be looking for her brother who had gone missing, so we were tasked to find him. Oh, and also I destroyed her in battle, which at this point I was taking on any battle that I could find since I needed to level up my Silky. I did also afterwards collect the reward for collecting the junk, which was 400 coins. Also found this one weird shop which had question marks on it, and basically this was a shop of just the random mystery boxes. And having completed a bunch of quests recently, I had a pretty decent amount of coins at 2,427, so I decided to buy one of the golden mystery boxes for 1,000 coins. And out of it I got an extremely cool looking multiverse Silky, making it the 14th fig in my collection. But I'm not gonna lie, even though it was golden and it looked cool, it still wasn't better than the old school Silky. And that's actually something you'll come to realize about this game, is that even if a character is gold, it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna be better than the non-gold characters. And I don't really know why it works like that, but I wasn't complaining. Oh, I'd also run into the tofu lover guy again, who had another mission for us, which was using 10 tofu within battle. So that was another one that was gonna just naturally happen. I also found this weird alleyway where Santa Claus seemed to be hanging out, and there is a mission to battle him, but apparently I just wasn't high enough level to do it yet, so I'd have to come back to this guy later on. I did also find a random mystery box on the ground at some point, which gave me a Seymour, so nothing too useful. I found another random dog just hanging around, so I took the time to battle him to level up my Silky, and this would be a good time to explain what the Silky does, or more so how to really use them. And it's actually pretty simple. You just want to save up your battle bar at the beginning to go for that battle bar speed up at the end of the thing, and then you just spam the very first attack and just hope and pray that RNG is on your side and you do a decent amount of damage. There is also the green shield bubble that you can apply, but that's really only used when there's a very threatening attack that you're about to get hit by. And winning this battle, I leveled up Silky and gave him +1 power. Nightwing had also leveled up and I gave him luck. And I think I can now quickly explain what dodge and luck do. Dodge itself is pretty explanatory, and basically the higher dodge skill you have on a fig, the higher chance it has to completely dodge an attack from your opponent. So it can be pretty overpowered if the opponent's just doing the super move and you just completely dodge it, but relying on the dodges is also pretty risky as they don't happen too often. And moving on to the second stat which I haven't explained, which is luck. And basically luck you can just treat as a critical hit chance, and if your luck procs, you basically just do extra damage, and more specifically it's 50% extra damage. And I never really figured out based on the stats what the chance of the dodge and the luck proccing was, but as far as I know they did seem pretty fairly balanced, and they weren't some sort of OP hidden stat. But moving back into the exploration, I ran into Bumblebee, who basically wanted me to buy her own fig. I then also did challenge her to a battle where she had Lady Legacy, but I pretty much destroyed her using Silky. But afterwards came in maybe the most broken and most insane NPC in the game, which was this guy named the King of the Beach. And technically I'm not supposed to be in the beach area yet, but I decided that I wanted to try and fight him, even though the game warned me against it. And seeing that he only had 1 fig and it was level 16, I thought that I could just constantly shield up my Silky and be fine. But for some reason, this happens to be the craziest battle in the entire game. The fig that the King of the Beach has is named Buona Beast, which is actually a fig that I add later on to my team, because if you look at it, you'll see that it has that battle bar boost on its second attack, like I mentioned way earlier, making it much better for charging up your battle bar. But that actually wasn't the insane thing about this battle, but it was actually that his one charged attack did 64 damage. But I actually lied, because that's not even the craziest thing. And for some reason, his final attack dealt 163 damage damage to my Robin. And to put that into perspective, the final boss of the entire game doesn't even deal that much damage. And I mean, it's not even close. There's literally no fig that you can unlock in the game that'll deal that much damage without some sort of boost. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know what happened in making this NPC, because even when you unlock Buana Beast for yourself, he isn't this good and doesn't deal that much damage. But either way, I learned my lesson and moved on. But while I was just looking around, I found this random water bucket, which apparently ended up being the Wonder Twin that we were looking for. And apparently he was hidden in this random spot because he was sad that the Wonder Twins didn't get any figs of their own. So he asked Robin if he thought that the Wonder Twins were still cool, and Robin kind of just lied to him and said yeah. And Robin also told him that he'd have a chat with Mr. Chibi if the Wonder Twin went back to his sister. And that was basically the mission, giving us 300 coins and an Aqualad fig, making it the 15th fig in our collection. And exploring the beach a little more, I found this one area that's glowing in the water, and after tapping on it, this cutscene appeared where a starfish came out of the water, allowing me to sort of walk over it. And I'm mentioning this now because it is important later on, but you won't see me talk about this until the very end of the game. And for now, I made my way over to Bizarro Comics because I'd somehow collected 2,040 coins, which was exactly the amount that we needed for the golden Batgirl. And normally if you don't have enough coins, you actually aren't able to look into the glass containers and look at the stats of the figs. But since I had enough coins, I could open the container and look at the Batgirl's stats. I'm not gonna lie, the Batgirl was literally the same exact thing as Robin. I would even say it was worse because it had its second attack be a charge up attack. So I ended up just not buying it, and instead added a couple of Robins to my cart alongside the Wonder Raven, meaning the Wonder Raven was the 16th fig added to our collection. And the Robins I actually bought because if you remember, that first dog gave us the mission to buy him. So instead of keeping them for myself, I gave them to the mission. Oh, I did also find a random box within a shiny tree, which actually this time gave me a new fig, which was Blackfire, making it the 17th fig in my collection. Oh, I also ended up adding my mod chip to my Silky, and it was the mod chip that summons the beatbox every time you defeat an opponent. And this was sorta when I started preparing heavily for the tournament again, so I fed Silky my figs to level up my old school Silky's power-ups, which upgrading this first one gave me a better tofu chance, which basically means every time the attack hits the opponent, there's a better chance that tofu spawns from it. But then I also did go on to upgrade my shield bubble as well, and this one was actually pretty cool because every time the shield bubble would break, it would now also heal me. And then the last upgrade I made was for Robin and his heroic pose, which the buff for it was just some extra power increase. And that's honestly the perfect buff as it just makes the ability that much better. Oh, and this isn't that important for the story, but I got a little curious and I wanted to see what would happen if I tried to compete in the dog tournament again, and it kind of just allowed me to compete. Basically going through the entire thing, leveling up my characters, and after beating the last cyborg boss of the tournament, I even got another 500 coins. So I realized that if I wanted to farm coins, that this would be the way. And even cooler was that Cyborg gives us another 80 Cyborg, which basically means even more coins. Oh, and within this tournament, I had used 10 tofu, which gave me 750 coins and another chip, which made it 25% more likely for tofu to spawn. I then got another message from the Tamaranian prince asking for more money, and just as I was about to start heading over there, there was actually a 50% off sale on all figs in Toyman store. And honestly, 50% off is pretty insane. So I started sprinting over there, and the first thing I did was instantly fill up my cart with all the Robins in the shop, because one we still needed for the mission, but then the rest I could feed to Silky to power up my Robin's powers. Oh, I also bought the 80s Robin, which I could have kept for myself, but I gave it to the mission instead for now. But then I unlocked George Washington, which was the 19th fig for my collection, and then also Lady Legacy, which was the 20th fig for my collection. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't know how George Washington snuck his way into being a character in the game. I mean, I do definitely remember him being in the show, but I don't know if he was significant enough to be added to the game. But either way, it's pretty cool. I did also buy out all of the chips in the shop, even the ones I didn't need, just because they were half off, and then went straight to Silky to enhance my Robin's powers, which the Birdarang gets a buff of where it becomes undodgeable. And I'm not gonna lie, this is a pretty insane buff, because way later on, the enemies start just dodging like crazy, and the Birdarang attack kind of just becomes a direct counter to him. I did also upgrade the Staff Smash, which gives it an increased stun duration, but since the Birdarang now did have the unblockable thing, it kind of instantly just became the better attack. And heading out of the shop, we could now collect this mission that we'd gotten way early on, and for completing it, we got 1500 coins and a level 2 mammoth. So the mammoth definitely definitely wasn't worth it, but the 1500 coins was more than enough. And my next stop was the mailbox at the Teen Titans Tower, where I sent the Tamaranian Prince another 600 coins and got 5 coins back for it. And even though at this point I thought I was getting completely scammed, because that's what the emails/mails are made out to be, I was still hopeful in getting repaid by the Tamaranian Prince. But also, while I was here to look at the mailbox, I also noticed that Cyborg was here with another side quest, and he wanted me to collect 8 waffles that were laying around the map. But I'd done enough stalling as it was now time to head back into the tournament. But since it still wasn't nighttime, I decided to take one last stop at Sticky Joe, and this might have been the best stop that I could have taken. Mainly because I decided to gamble my life away and buy another 1000 gold pack, and out of it I'd gotten the one character that had recently destroyed me, Beast, making it my 21st fig, but also it was finally an actual decent character that I could add to my arsenal. And since it came out of a gold box, it was actually already level 6, so I didn't have to worry too much about leveling it up quickly and could instantly bring it into the tournament. Oh, and I also gave him this mod chip which started the Beast off with 5+ attack damage, and that chip is only applicable to the people of that class, which is named the Beastly class. But okay, it was finally night and time to enter the tournament once again, where again we first saw Tin Can Eddie, who we destroyed. Same with Tofu Tony and Gizmo, meaning we'd made it back to Officer Doug one more time, and this time I wasn't planning to lose. And even though my Robin himself was pretty low, I did have Beast, Lady Legacy, and lastly Nightwing to bring in. Now this definitely wasn't the best set of characters I could have brought in here, but again you do have to remember that I have to save my best characters for the final battle. So this was the team that I came up with, and I realized that last time I made the mistake of trying to heal with Starfire, and my best bet at winning this would just be constantly attacking. And that's actually something I learned playing this game, was that the attacking moves just seem to be way better than the stalling moves. Like for some reason the stun effects, the battle bar slowdowns, and even the heals aren't that good. And for some reason the moves that do actual damage seem to just be the best bet to go with. And using this method and the fact that we had Beast with this pretty overpowered battle bar speed thing, it ensured that we're easily able to take out the opponent and win, which leveled up our Beast, and I gave him extra health, and the Tofu also came in clutch, giving us a team heal, which I heavily needed for my Robin as he was only at 9 health. And then we went upwards and found out that the final boss was Sticky Joe himself, and this was where I decided to bring in the best team that I had so far, containing Beast, Robin, and lastly Old School Silky. And the strategy for this team had actually started off before the battle even began, because you might have noticed that I placed Beast in the front, and that's because you want to place him there so he starts off first and you're able to get off that battle bar boost, which at this point the next move in my strategy was switching over to Silky so I could spam his attacks. And normally this would work out perfectly since the shield bubble is really good against defending against attacks, but the Sticky Joe boss had an attack where he dealt damage to all 3 of my characters, so even though my Silky was surviving, my other 2 characters in the back were taking damage over time. And eventually it started to show that the Silky's attacks didn't deal enough damage to the Sticky Joe, and that I would eventually end up losing if this went on. So instead I had to pivot to switching over to Beast again for the bar speed boost, but the next step was switching over to Robin so I could spam his heroic pose over and over again. And this was actually working out pretty well because I finally was able to deal a pretty decent amount of damage to Sticky Joe. But sadly, with a few more Sticky Joe attacks, I had lost my Robin. So now I was dependent on the Silky and the Beast to deal enough damage to him. And Silky was actually doing pretty well, getting him down very low in health, with eventually Sticky Joe being one shot away, but then he used his final move, which for some reason gives him 21 HP. And at this point, I thought I was cooked. So I knew I was gonna have to pivot from the Silky and just try a new strategy altogether. And somehow Beast alone was the answer, because his battle bar speed power combined with the first attack that deals 15 damage ends up actually being faster than Sticky Joe can get his health upgrade. And when I figured this out, I started just spamming it. After one attack, I got him down to 10 health, and eventually as Sticky Joe was about to get his heal off, I actually got my attack off first, and my Beast dealt the final blow, taking out Sticky Joe, meaning we'd finally beaten the tournament. And my reward again was a pretty decent 500 coins. Oh, and of course the magnificent trash can trophy, alongside the Sticky Joe fig provided to us by Sticky Joe himself, making it the 22nd fig added to our collection. And after exiting the building, Sticky Joe gave us another thing which seemed to be a starfish crown. And again, the map zoomed out and uncovered another area within the game, which was the beach, because the left side we actually didn't have access to at first, but more importantly, Hooded Hood appeared again. And basically in this convo, Hooded Hood just laughed at us, and because of his laughing, Robin made him officially his arch nemesis. And then Robin also said that this felt familiar and questioned whether he already knew Hooded Hood, which made Hooded Hood a little flustered and he ran away. And if you made it this far into the video, I have a question for you. Who do you think the Hooded Hood is? I mean, the obvious character that the game was pointing at this point was of course Slade, which is supposed to be Robin's arch nemesis. That's why they had that little interaction there. But in these games, it's of course never the obvious one. So let me know in the comments who you think it is. But looking at the shop, I added the Mother May I fig to my collection, making it the 23rd of 77. We then got a message from Batman saying that he found some birdarangs in the laundry and he was disappointed in us since he discussed this with us before, and then he's resending our allowance for this month. Some pretty interesting conversations with Batman, but more importantly, we were now high enough level to finally fight Santa, and his fig of choice was Santa Claus. And like Sticky Joe, he had an attack that dealt damage to all of our characters, and he actually dealt a pretty decent amount of damage, so our characters got very low in health, but I was again just able to overpower him using Robin's heroic pose and then Buwanabe's charge attack. And in return for winning, we got the Santa Claus fig, making it the 24th of our collection. It's pretty cool to have, but usage wise, it wasn't that good. I then ran into Dr. Light, who wants to know what it feels like to be a hero sometimes, and basically to give him that feeling, we have to fight him using 3 villain figurines. So this would be a quest for way later on. I then ran into the annoying kid again, and he made fun of the 80s figurines, so then we were tasked to beat him using 3 80s figurines. Another mission that I would tackle way later on, because to complete it, I would need some 80s figs that were leveled up, and I just didn't have a team of those at this point. Also ran into Speedy, who challenged me to a battle, and he kind of just mained his own 2 characters, which were Speedy and Red Arrow, and I'm not gonna lie, both of them are pretty awful, and even with them both being kind of over leveled in this battle, I was pretty easily able to win. And for completing the mission slash battle, we unlocked a Red Arrow as our 26th figure, and afterwards I made it over to this building which had the Justice League logo on it, and this building was the Justice League's recruitment office, where basically you fight random teams of figs and try to rank up your rank, which you can see at the bottom. And every time you rank up, you get a mystery box which can get you a ton of different figs, but there's also 3 figs that are only accessible in this recruitment office, which 2 of them you can get pretty easily, but there's one that literally takes hours, and you'll see what I mean when we start grinding this out. But for now, I should explain how the battles work, because they're a little different, as there's this randomizer that happens that either gives buffs to everyone or debuffs everyone. And luckily on the very first battle, I got the buff where mine and my opponent's power bar speed is faster. And jumping into the fight, it's like any regular battle with just the difference of the buff. So I was pretty easily able to win, and after each win, you get a certain amount of coins and also a certain amount of XP that goes towards your rank. And since I was trying to rank up, I dove into another battle with this time getting a debuff of Waffle Mania. And basically with this debuff, there's always a waffle on one of your attacks, which can be pretty annoying when you're trying to combo different things, but luckily every time you use a move, the waffle trades places with another move, so it's not too annoying. And I was pretty easily able to win again, and this time getting enough XP to rank up, which the mystery box for didn't give me anything new, but if you look towards the right, that door that looks evil says it unlocks at rank 5. So I got very curious what this meant and sort of just started grinding out levels, which in the process, one of the mystery boxes gave me Brother Blood, which was a new fig and the 27th one for my collection. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see that getting to rank 5 is actually going to get me a gold mystery box as well. So it'd be sort of a double win getting the gold mystery box and the door. Oh, and the nice thing about these battles was that you also get XP, so my Robin had leveled up to level 15. But the best part actually came when we got to rank 5 and we actually unlocked an exclusive one, which was Blue Beetle, who was the 28th figure for our collection. And this fig is one of, if not the best ones in the entire game. And that's because he has this one move called the Sonic Cannon, which when you use it, it makes the entire other team vulnerable, basically making them take 50% more damage. And then he has some pretty solid attacks, one which just targets one person, but then there's one that also targets the entire other group. And you'll see later on, if you combo this with Robin's heroic pose, they kind of go insane. But that's for later, because for now we had to get back to normal and progress through the story. But before I did anything, I went back into the Riddler shop and bought a golden box, which ended up getting me a new figure, which was Alfred. And now we had 29 figs. And afterwards, I finally made it down to the beach and got into conversation with the king of the beach again, expecting to battle him. But for some reason this time, he didn't want to battle and just let me through. And I was advised to go check out this clam, which when I clicked on it and challenged it to battle, I saw that it had Aquaman fig, which I was kind of just able to completely annihilate since my Robin and my Buona Beast had been pretty over-leveled from the Justice League recruitment office, and Blue Beetle would be soon up there as well, which if you're curious about, most of the stat points for Blue Beetle I always put into power, and if power wasn't available, I'd put it into luck, because those are basically the 2 stat points that increase the damage. But getting back to the story, apparently the clam wanted something to eat, and I'd remembered there was an ice cream shop on the other end of the beach, but before making my way over there, I saw that there was a shop down here, and it ended up being Sticky Joe. And if you remember, he has that multiverse Sticky Joe fig, which I didn't have yet, and since I had enough coins now, I ended up buying it, making it the 30th fig in my collection. And as I made it to the ice cream shop, I saw that it was closed until the sun came up, so instead I went to battle the King of the Beach, who this time, alongside the Buona Beast, also had a Green Lantern cyborg, but he didn't deal nearly as much damage as he did last time, so even though my Robin had gotten one-shotted, I did feel a little bit safer. And you might have noticed there that a duck popped up when it dealt that 47 damage, and that's basically the luck stat coming into play, meaning that he got a crit hit there, and that's actually why it dealt so much damage. And Robin didn't die in vain, as I'd used his heroic pose ability a ton of times, and you can see that my Buona Beast was about to deal 55 damage to the other Buona Beast and just completely took it out, leaving only the Green Lantern cyborg on the other team, which only had 26 health. So I switched over to Silky and slowly just started dwindling his health down, eventually completely defeating him. And by the time I got out of the battle, it was completely daytime, but I got sidetracked by this other shop that was on the beach, and within it I bought Bumblebee but gave it to the mission, which in return got me 350 coins and this one pointy chip. The pointy chip basically, whichever fig is wearing it, whenever they get attacked, the opponent also gets dealt 1 damage. So kind of like a very bad version of the Rocky helmet from Pokemon. But that aside, I made it to the ice cream shop where I bought ice cream for 200 coins and then also challenged it to a battle because somehow the ice cream stand knew how to use figs. And this battle was actually very easy as I only had 1 fig and it was very low level. And after winning that, I actually got another message from the Tamaranian prince who again needed my help with some coins. But before getting there, I ran into Kid Flash who had a mission for me which involved the Flash Cell game. And you'll see what that is pretty soon. But in the meantime, I'd gotten another message which seemed to come from a different time, and they were asking me to bury a George Washington figure by the fountain that we'd seen at the beginning of the game. A lot of interesting quests being added to the arsenal. The beach also had this one interesting shop which basically specialized in chips, and the main one I want to focus on is this one named Just Gotta Dance. And basically whenever you play the fig that has this chip attached into the battle for the first time, you get that power bar boost, and that's basically for free every single game. There was also this chip which granted an extra coin explosion whenever the fig wearing this destroyed an opponent, and I thought this would be a pretty good way to farm some coins, so I bought it as well. The Just Gotta Dance one I applied to Robin, and the coin explosion one I applied to Blue Beetle as he'd be my main attacker defeating all the enemies. And just like that, we had a pretty powerful trio between Robin, Buona Beast, and Blue Beetle. What you're gonna see is actually the trio that I use for the rest of the game, because I end up not seeing any other figs that seem better for the team. But that aside, remember the Flash Sale game that Kid Flash mentioned? Well, it was this building right in the middle, and it cost 100 coins to play each time, and basically it spawns these random tickets assorted across the map, and then there's a small countdown which after you're set free at super speeds to try and collect the most of these tickets that you can. And if you look at the bottom right, you'll see that there's a 30-second counter, and the goal is to try to collect the tickets and make it back to the shop before that counter goes down all the way to 0. Because say you get like 10 tickets but you don't make it all the way back to the shop, it doesn't count and you just lose all of them. So you have to strategically map out your path. And for my first try, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little confused and ended up just going into the shop with only 5 tickets, even though the goal was to reach 7 because that's what Kid Flash has challenged us to. But this was still helpful because it showed me all of the different figs and chips that were in the shop, especially this golden 5-star one named Star Flash, which cost 10 tickets. And since I knew I was eventually gonna have to unlock that one at some point, I thought of just going for it now. But 10 was no joke because I ended up getting 7 and wasn't even close to making it back to the place. So I did end up failing. But then I got this flash sale which placed a bunch of tickets on the beach alone. So I was able to collect 10 tickets in total with 10 seconds still remaining, and now my goal was just to make it back to the shop. And honestly, it was insanely close and I barely made it to the shop with 1 second left. And I instantly went and bought the Star Flash and was thankful that I got this over with because this could have been a pain of an achievement to unlock. And this also meant the Star Flash was the 30-second figure that we unlocked. And this meant that we completed the mission that Kid Flash gave us, which was getting back to the shop with 7 tickets. And for completing it, we got 500 coins and a chip that I don't end up using. I also went back to the Titan's Tower and made a quick stop at the mailbox because the scammers slash Tamaranian prince needed 1,000 coins. Or well, I say scammer, but that's just an assumption because it's not fully clear yet. And this was kind of the mini storyline that I was most excited for because I really wanted to see if the Tamaranian prince would actually give me something in return. But for now, I was just gonna have to settle with the 5 coins that he kept giving me. Afterwards, I ran into Starfire, and I'm not gonna lie, I feel like you guys probably by now understand what the side missions entail. Basically small, but sometimes annoying tasks that you have to do around Jump City. And instead of mentioning everything that happens within the side missions, I'm gonna start just showing you the figs that are unlocked at the end of them, in a way to speed up the process, because otherwise there's tasks like the ones that Starfire gives us that are completely kinda just useless, and the only important thing about them is unlocking the fig at the end. So let's go back to the clam that we'd previously fought and feed him the ice cream that we bought for him. And for some reason, feeding it the ice cream made it bring up a path of starfish, which eventually just led into this huge building that popped up out of nowhere. So of course, I made my way along the path and entered the building, which was the Atlantean Fish-tastic tourney of the sea. And our first battle was some fish, who we very quickly annihilated, leading us to our second battle against Jaina. And if you look very up top, you'll see that her figs are only level 8 and level 7, which compared to my level 17 and level 15 don't really match up well. So we kind of annihilated her as well. Third battle, for some reason, was Beast Boy, and his team consisted of 3 different types of Beast Boys, which like I mentioned at the beginning of the video are some of the worst ones in the entire game, so he wasn't a challenge at all either. Our next stop was a Tofu, which gave me a 7 health team heal, but this did nothing as I hadn't lost any health yet. Our second to last battle was against the King of the Beach, who seems to always have a Bwana Beast on his team, and this was actually probably the easiest battle that we had against the King of the Beach, because this time he didn't have hacks on. And this led us to the final boss battle, which was up against Aqualad, which did make complete sense. And his team consisted of Aquaman and 2 different types of Aqualads. And if you haven't noticed, my Robin had leveled up so much that now his heroic pose move was giving a +8 power every time I used it. And comboing that with the battle bar boost that we get from the chip that he had on, I was able to get my battering attack to 55 damage and take out Aquaman before he even got an attack off. And let's say my battle bar boost runs out, I just switch over to Bwana Beast and then just use his second ability to give me the bar speed again, and then go back to Robin and spamming the heroic pose, forcing my opponents to face the vicious cycle of demise. It genuinely felt impossible at this point to even lose a battle, but of course we'd only beaten 3 tourneys at this point and there were still 3 more left. And after beating this tourney, we got the trophy, and Aqualad gave us a Pirate Aqualad fig, making it the 33rd one for our collection. And leaving the tournament, we unlocked another area of the map which was previously covered, and again Hooded Hood popped up out of nowhere, and this time Robin stopped him in his tracks, saying that he'd figured out his hidden identity, which actually got the Hooded Hood a little scared. And with Robin's slow build up, he eventually announced that Hooded Hood was slayed, but Hooded Hood was confused about this and completely just denied it, saying that he wasn't slayed at all, saying that he'd actually never even heard of him. And then after embarrassing Robin, he kind of just left. And just as I was about to start running to the new area, we got an announcement that Bizarro Comics had received a new shipment of figures. So of course I went in to look at what these new figures were, and I saw the Martian Beast Boy, making him the 34th figure that we'd collected. Oh, I did also run into Commissioner Gordon in this weird corner, and this side mission is the prime example of being sort of just a time waste, but we do unlock a very important fig at the end of it, so I thought I'd mention it here. Oh, and since I had a ton of figures that I wasn't going to be using, I decided it'd be a good time to upgrade my main characters, which after upgrading the Sonic Cannon, it gives it an extra stun debuff on top of the vulnerable one. And the last thing I upgraded for now was the swords, which now gives a power debuff to the opponent. And after these upgrades, I made my way over to the new area, which was this rich gated community, and the next tournament was in this insane mansion. And of course, with the new area unlocked, there were the typical side quests that you get alongside it, but I was mainly only concerned with this shop, which is one of the cooler ones because it only has gold figs in it, and all of them are extremely expensive. And since at this point I was a little broke, I couldn't really access any of them. But I actually did have some good news because I received this message that was from the Tamaranian prince, and apparently because of our financial help, he was now able to feed his 52 children, and his wife was very full of joy. He appreciated us for having trust in him, and he said that he left us something in the mailbox. So I was very excited to find out what this was. But before I made my way over there were some things that I needed to do around this area, one of which was defeat Trigon in a battle, which after defeating, we unlocked Argyle Trigon, the 36th figure of our collection. And you might have noticed there that I actually jumped from number 34 to number 36, which to be honest, I've been trying to look back at my footage and I can't figure out what the 35th one I unlocked was. I either just completely forgot to record the footage or just got lost somewhere. But just know there was a figure unlocked between the 34th, which was the Martian Beast Boy, and the Argyle Trigon, which was 36. But eventually I did make it over to the Teen Titans tower and was very excited to click on the mailbox, which after clicking on, I unlocked Darkseid and added it as the 37th figure in our collection. So it's definitely worth sending that prince all that money. And I'm not gonna lie, Darkseid is a pretty cool figure to have, but looking at his moves, it's pretty doo-doo. So it's another one that I don't really end up using. I did notice that Raven appears at nighttime right by her shop named the Zinthos, and apparently just like Robin, Raven was also addicted to the figures, and so she immediately challenged me to a battle, which I of course kind of annihilated her in, and then I entered her shop, which actually had a bunch of new characters that I hadn't unlocked yet. Oh, and before buying anything, I should mention that I'd also unlocked 80s Beast Boy, which was the 30th figure that I unlocked, but I just didn't realize that I wasn't recording when I bought it. And moving on, the 39th figure was 80s Raven, the 40th figure was Other May I, the 41st figure was Starfire the Terrible, and lastly, the 42nd figure was just normal Trigon. Oh, and afterwards I leveled up Wannabe's Disco Ball attack, and this one was a pretty cool one because alongside the battle bar speed, it also now gave us bonus power, sort of similar to the heroic pose, but just a lot less power. A cool little side quest that we encounter was this one with Tofu Tony, who basically said that there were tofu snatching alligators in the sewers, and warping through the sewers, we found out that the alligator in question was Killer Croc, and after trying to talk to him, he fled away, and we're tasked to track him down, and I was able to track him down warping through the sewers into this area, which after he challenged me to a battle. And this would be a good opportunity to explain how Robin and Blue Beetle combo very well with each other. Basically, the heroic pose, of course, as you know, gives me more and more power, but if you combine it with the vulnerable ability of Blue Beetle, they have a multiplicative effect on each other because the vulnerable ability makes you do 50% more damage of the damage you're supposed to deal with the buff from the heroic pose. And this battle with Killer Croc was an important one because we'd gotten Robin to level 20, which is the max level you can reach in this game. And there isn't anything special that comes with it, just normal stat buff. Wannabe's had also reached level 18, and Blue Beetle had reached level 12. And more importantly, for defeating Killer Croc, we got 500 coins and unlocked Killer Croc himself, which was the 43rd fig in our collection. And now it was also time to compete in the Uppity Uptown tournament, which we rolled through Gizmo, the Snooty Mom, Billy Bean, Brain, and lastly Bumblebee, before making it to the final boss, which very surprisingly was Terra. And it was a little weird to see her here, but basically she explained that she tricked a wealthy couple into adopting her, and that's how she got into this position. And Terra for the most part was pretty easy, but she did have this one attack similar to Mammoth's, if you remember, that dealt damage to all three of our characters, and with his help she was able to annihilate our Blue Beetle. But at this point it was a little too late for her, as I'd already done 70% of her health, and Robin was able to take care of the rest, giving me the trophy for victory and the Terra figure to add to our collection as our 44th one. And apparently in the trophy that we obtained, there was something rattling inside, which happened to be a pearl, and there was only one thing that I remembered that could have the pearl related to it. But before making my way over there, I stopped by the shop and unlocked the Multiverse Robin, the 45th one in our collection. And I did check to see if maybe it was better than normal Robin, but I'm pretty sure normal Robin was still better because of his abilities. I then made another stop by Raven's shop and unlocked Jinx as our 46th character, and eventually made it over to the clam, which I'd assumed the pearl was for. And feeding it the pearl, it opened up and revealed Aquaman inside. And basically we ended up asking him for a ride on a whale, which led us to this Alcatraz-like prison area, where we got word that there was a tourney being held inside the jail, but the problem was that we had to actually be inside of the jail as a prisoner to compete in the tourney. So now our goal was to get arrested. And seeing this shiny pillow on the ground, Robin had an interesting idea. And this idea was going in front of the policeman and then ripping the tag off the pillow right in front of him, which somehow made the policeman angry, and we were now sent to jail and tasked to win the jail tournament. We did run into some characters like Jinx, who basically asked us to give a love letter for her to Cyborg, but that's literally the only side quest within this area, meaning I didn't have to waste any time and could just get straight into the tournament, with our first opponent being Sad Pete, the second opponent was Killer Moth, the third one was Peter Oysterpuff, a character I'm unfamiliar with, the fourth one was Brother Blood, the fifth opponent was Rose Wilson, and the last opponent, you might have already guessed it, was Jinx, who seemed a little lost, but we were eager to win this tourney. So using my usual combo, I completely annihilated her Jinx character, and then also did the same exact thing to her Darkseid figure as well, making this probably the fastest trophy I'd unlocked so far. And we got Multiverse Jinx as our 47th figure right afterwards. And leaving the tournament, we were once again confronted by Hooded Hood, who said it was finally time for us to go and battle him. And thankfully, he also helped us escape the prison. But then this little cutscene happened where a giant spacecraft docked right by the Teen Titans tower, and we're given the quest to become the Megatini champion, meaning our time had come. But before that, if you look at the bottom right, you'll see that we have 18 side missions that we still need to complete. So that's exactly what I started doing, trying to unlock as many figures as possible. The first of which was Dad Nightwing, being the 48th unlock. The 49th one was Princess Silky. The 50th one, it didn't give us an animation for, but it was 80 Starfire. The 51st one, it also didn't give me an animation for, but it was pretty cool, which was Harley Quinn. 53rd was Kid Flash from the Flash sale game. There was also a mission which unlocked the Grumpy chip for me, which basically gives the figure you give this to 50% more power, but decreases their health by 50 as well. So it's basically the perfect thing for Blue Beetle, as he was already a glass cannon. Oh, and if you remember that George Washington achievement, the Time Traveler had also sent us a Serious Bumblebee figurine, giving us now 54 in our collection. I'd also made it all the way back to Gizmo, who we couldn't really find any evidence against, but since we were annoying him so much, he actually gave us a multiverse Gizmo to get off his back, making this the 55th figure. There was also the Starfire mission that we completed, which gave me multiverse Starfire, and at this point I'd gotten a little tired of doing side missions, so I decided it was time to become the Megatini champion. And before participating, I went to Cyborg to collect that ultimate chip that he'd made, and basically what it does is that whenever your figure dances, it throws bonus waffles at your opponent. I honestly have no idea if this is good at all, and actually never end up using it. But that aside, I made my way over to the spacecraft, and this was the place where the Megatini Tournament Championship was taking place. Our first opponent was Batgirl, and you can tell that this was going to be difficult because each of her characters were also max level. But the strategy I used in this battle was just a little bit different from my normal, and basically I switched between Robin and Beast using the Disco Ball and the Heroic Pose ability, giving me a massive amount of power. And then when the time was right, I switched over to Blue Beetle using the Sonic Cannon on my opponents, which made all three vulnerable. And lastly, I used Blue Beetle's final attack, which attacked all three of them and took them all out at once. That's definitely one of the more satisfying things that you can do in this game. And I also got very lucky with the Tofu here because it was a 10 team heal for my team. Our second opponent in the tournament was Collector Carl, when his team had Darkseid, Aquaman, and the Joker all at max level. And here I basically did the same thing again, using my Heroic Pose and my Beast as disco thing, and then switched over to Blue Beetle to deal as much damage as possible. And eventually I was able to make it through the battle, taking a little bit of damage on my Robin, but nothing too bad. And even better, the last Tofu before the final battle gave me another team heal. But finally, moving upwards, and to no shock, our final opponent was Hooded Hood, who was definitely the weirdest battle that we're being put up against, because on his team he had Hooded Hood and then also this mystery level 5 character. And I thought, oh, this would be easier than any normal battle since it's only one main big boss, and my team kind of excels in shutting them down. But then a problem occurred right as I was about to do my large attack, one-shotting the Hooded Hood, where he switched to what seemed like a cyborg, and the cyborg only had 10 health. But the problem here was that he wasn't going to switch back to the Hooded Hood, and I'd have to waste all the heroic poses I just used on this one character, and it seemed like there was no other way around it, so I had to just use my attack on it, resetting my heroic pose buffs. But the bad thing was that my Blue Beetle had been one shot by that cyborg, so now I was only left with Beast and Robin. And I thought to myself that this was still very doable because we'd taken out the other cyborg. And as I was building up my heroic pose power buff again, I was made to realize why this was the final boss, because it switched out into what seemed like a Starfire, which then I put two and two together, seeing that the blank character is basically like an infinite character that stays there forever, and it'll just keep reviving itself over and over again until the Hooded Hood is defeated, meaning that we have to be fast and quick with our attacks that we deal to the Hooded Hood and try to take him out before these characters come in. But as we lost our fast attacker this time, it seemed like all hope was lost, and lost it was because I kind of completely got annihilated, but I did take him down all the way down to 31 health, and I knew that next time I faced him I would be able to take him down without a doubt. So I blitzed through the first two characters again, making it to the Hooded Hood once more, and this time I made sure not to get too greedy with the power buffs and used my Blue Beetle's attack as soon as possible. And just like that, with one attack I'd gotten him down to 41 health, and even though a Starfire came in, I quickly took it down using Robin's Birdarang, and then used one final powered up attack by Blue Beetle to take down the Hooded Hood, which gave us 3,000 coins, leveled up Blue Beetle to level 20, and finally unlocked the last trophy of the entire game, meaning I'd become the Megatini champion and also gotten the Hooded Hood as our 57th figure, meaning that we're only 20 away from unlocking all of them. We got a little bit of a congratulations by every member of the Teen Titans, but most importantly, it was now time to see who Hooded Hood Hood really was, and it turned out to be Mr. Chibi, the creator of the Teeny Titan figures. And he basically explains that he did this so that the people within the Teeny Titan community would have a goal that they wanted to reach, and that they'd have some type of passion to reach these goals, which his words made Robin cry because he was definitely passionate, but he quickly retracted his tears when Mr. Chibi said that this made stupid amounts of money, and the intentions became clear. And going back to normal, we actually now had the ability to fight Mr. Chibi as himself. I'm not gonna lie, he was much easier than the Hooded Hood battle, and after defeating him, we actually got Mr. Chibi's figurine, being the 58th of the collection. Our next stop, if you remember, Dr. Light way in the beginning wanted to fight us with 3 villainous figures, and I'd actually been leveling up some of my figures along the way but hadn't mentioned it, so I was now prepared to fight him. And after defeating him, we unlocked Robotic Brother Blood as the 59th figure. The 60th one was Black Manta, which I got from a store. And I was actually a little confused how I still had 17 figures that I hadn't unlocked, but looking through my wiki, I realized that I didn't have some of the simple characters like Gizmo or Billy Numerous. Oh, and even Speedy, who I unlocked as my 61th character. 62nd was Multiverse Cyborg, which I got from the Uppity Uptown shop. 63rd was Aquaman, who I got from the same exact place. 64th I obtained from the other Uppity Uptown shop, and it was Bat Robin. 65th was Rose Wilson from the same shop, and 66th was Super Silky from the same shop as well. 67th, like I mentioned, was Gizmo, and 68th was Billy Numerous. Oh, and it also built out this path on the beach, if you remember, from way early on, and it led me to this island where Buana Beast was, who after defeating in battle, we unlocked Multiverse Buana Beast as the 69th figurine. But now it was time to start our Justice League grind, as we had 2 characters that we needed to unlock from here. And even though we'd unlocked the Chaos door to the right, the strategy for the Justice League leveling up was basically just going to the left easy door, because the Chaos door gave us 50 more experience, but it was definitely a lot slower to beat than the left door. And eventually, after grinding for about an hour, I made it to rank 15 and still hadn't unlocked any of the exclusive characters that I needed. And I was a little clueless at this point because I hadn't done any research on when or how I actually unlocked the characters. So for now, I went to the normal world where I needed to unlock some other characters, and one of them was by fighting Beast Boy using 3 of our own Beast Boy figurines. And I'd actually been leveling these guys up in the Justice League battles, just so I could prepare for this battle. And after winning, we unlocked Multiverse Beast Boy, the 70th figure in our collection. My next stop was the Annoying Kid, who challenged us to beat him with the 3 80s figures, and these I'd also been leveling up during my Justice League battles, so I was able to defeat him pretty easily. And I unlocked the Green Lantern Cyborg, making it 71 in our collection, and now we're only 6 away. I remember that I actually hadn't unlocked the Batgirl from the store yet, and also while I was in the shop, I realized that they'd also added a Joker one, which cost 9,000 coins, but thankfully I had a lot of coins to spare now as I'd been grinding. So the 72nd was Batgirl, and 73rd was Joker, meaning we had 4 more figures to go, 2 of which we unlock on this prison island. The 74th was this gorilla guy, and the 75th was Killer Moth, meaning now the only 2 we had left were the ones from the Justice League recruitment office. And this is actually where I decided to do some research because I didn't know how long I'd be grinding for, and what I found out was honestly disastrous, because one of the figurines we unlock at rank 20, but the second/last one we unlock at rank 50. So I knew I was in for hours of grinding, especially because as you rank up, it takes more and more battles to rank up to the next rank. But eventually, after many battles, I did get to rank 20, unlocking Artemis, who was the 76th figure added to our collection, meaning we're only 1 away. But this one last figure by itself was an eternity away, and I'm not kidding, it took me literally 5 hours of grinding to get to. But eventually, I did get to this spot where I was only 1 more battle away from rank 50, and I thought it was only right that the last battle would be done within the Intense door, and thankfully the randomizer chose a dance party for us. And I actually want to show this battle because my strategy at this point had completely changed as I replaced my Buana Beast with the Green Cyborg, because I learned that he had this battery ability which basically took away some of his health but then gave us a pretty decent amount of bar power. And using this, I could just spam my heroic pose and then spam the battery power over and over again, which makes it to where the opponent doesn't ever gain any bar power, which was also sorta done because my Green Cyborg had a chip on him which insta stuns the opponent at the beginning of the battle. And this would just give me a ton of time to keep building up my power while constantly switching between the Cyborg and the Robin, spamming their abilities over and over again, until eventually we had enough power where I could use the Sonic Cannon of the Blue Beetle and then use the triple attack, taking down most opponents. But Mammoth was a pretty tanky one, so he survived 1 shot. But that didn't last long as I charged up to my first attack and took him out. And now we only had 2 opponents left with very minimal health. What I didn't want dodging my attacks, so I used the Birdarangs on him, which very reliably defeated both of them. And if you look at my coin count to the left, you can see that I'd accumulated 41,000 coins just from these Justice League battles. And I'd finally reached rank 50, meaning I'd unlocked the last figure, which was Bizarro. Basically like a reverse Superman if you're unfamiliar. And there it was, all 77 figures collected. And if we look at our missions tab, we can see that I'd become the Mega Teeny champion, and there were no side missions left either. The trophies had all been collected as well, and the wiki had also been fully filled out, meaning there's nothing else for me to do, and I'd completely 100%ed the game. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and let me know in the comments if you want me to play Teeny Titans Go Figure, which is the second and I've heard bigger and better version of this game. Okay, that's enough yapping from me. Bye bye.